The militant Palestinian group Hamas says it has accepted the terms of a new ceasefire proposal for Gaza that mirrors a U.S.-backed plan. Israel has yet to respond directly. Now, officials insist their position is unchanged. They want all 20 remaining hostages freed and the remains of 30 others returned. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vows that the war will continue until Hamas is disarmed. Mediators from Qatar, Egypt, and the United States are pushing to turn this fragile opening into a deal. At the same time, Israel is preparing an expanded assault on Gaza's most populated areas. I'm joined now by Aaron David Miller. He's a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Aaron, it's good to have you back on the program. Hamas says that it has accepted a ceasefire proposal almost identical to the U.S. plan. Israel has not rejected it, but insists all hostages have to be freed under conditions laid out by the Israeli cabinet. I mean, how should we read this ambiguity? Is this real openness, or do you see this as a political tactic to buy time?
I mean, I think Netanyahu is under conflicting pressures. On one hand, the clear public protests might suggest that even a partial deal would benefit his interests. His other two coalition partners, Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, are against it. They want the total destruction of Hamas, as does the prime minister, but they're pressing hard for a serious effort by the IDF to enter Gaza City, if not expand Israeli control through most of Gaza. Trump administration, the president tweeted day before yesterday that he thought the hostages would never come home until Hamas was completely destroyed. So I guess if Netanyahu wants to risk a major IDF operation in Gaza, then he'll continue to insist on a comprehensive deal, and we'll end up drifting one way or another to an expanded military operation. I think, though, there's a reasonable chance that the Israelis will come to accept another partial agreement. But let's be clear about one thing. This is not going to bring us any closer to ending the war in Gaza, because the fundamental end games of Hamas and the current Israeli government are diametrically opposed to one another.
Well, you say Netanyahu may be drifting. I mean, he himself has said that Hamas is under atomic pressure, but he's avoided addressing the outline of the deal. Is this vagueness? Is it a sign that he's leaving himself room to pivot if the political winds do shift?
I mean, he can pivot toward an interim deal. The question is whether he would ever embrace a comprehensive agreement, which would require an Israeli withdrawal, at least to an agreed buffer zone, and an end of the war, a formal declaration that the war is over. It's hard for me to see under these circumstances that would meet the prime minister's notion of total victory, which is not just the hollowing out of Hamas and its destruction as a military organization. They've achieved that. But he wants Hamas disarmed. He wants what remains of the leadership expelled from Gaza. And he wants a primary role in who is going to determine the security architecture or structure if the war was truly to end. And I think it raises the question that unless three questions are answered, who or what will govern Gaza, who or what will provide the security architecture, and who or what is going to undertake the gargantuan galactic task of reconstruction with 2 million Gazans in place, 1 million of those being children, those questions are not even on the cusp of being addressed. So I think we're a long way away from anything that you and I would describe as an end to the war.
Well, what about the hostages here? Israel's own military chief has warned that a full assault could put the hostages at even greater risk, and with only about 20 thought to still be alive. I'm just wondering, how much leverage does the hostage issue actually hold over war planning right now?
Very little, actually. In large part because public pressure is not going to be determinative. It's a factor, but it's not going to countervail the other pressures that Mr. Netanyahu is under. In public opinion, the magic number here is not the hundreds of thousands of Israelis that have demonstrated over the weekend. It's 60+1. It's the number of seats that you need to govern. And he happens to have a relatively coherent, cohesive coalition, even though until October 19th, when the Knesset readjourns, he's freed from any threat to overthrow the government or to introduce legislation that toward that end to schedule new elections. I think that if he's going to do a deal, it'll be in the next couple months.
Well, can he get away with that, just ignoring what the public is demanding? I mean, that's what you're saying. He can just, let it go in one ear and out the other.
Yes, every public opinion poll suggests that large majorities of Israelis want the war ended and the hostages redeemed. And by the way, that does not mean that Netanyahu is in their good stead. On three issues, he has lost, I think, the confidence of most Israelis. Number one, on exempting the ultra-Orthodox from military service, particularly during a time of war. Number two, the judicial reform, which continues in an effort to emasculate the Supreme Court. And three, the lack of accountability. There's been no state commission of inquiry, no effort to assess responsibility, culpability for what happened on October 7, the operational failure and the intelligence failure. So, but again, I think that in this case, it is high politics, not mass politics, that essentially has ruled the day.
What would you say? What would be the worst case outcome for this? Let's say if we go full throttle the way that is being planned, what would be the worst case outcome in your opinion?
Oh, I think, and there's definitely a worst case possibility. That would involve a major Israeli ground operation in Gaza City. That would mean the loss of Israeli soldiers, hostages. Clearly, we saw last August what happened. When Israeli soldiers approached, Hamas had standing orders to execute the hostages, and they willfully murdered 6, including an American citizen. And the other downside, obviously, is the tremendous source of suffering and economic, physical dislocation that has beset the population of Gaza, including credible reports of starvation and malnutrition. So if the war continues, all of these things are distinct possibilities.
It has been, I'm just asking before we run out of time, it has been about 2 weeks since Netanyahu announced plans to take all of Gaza, but he was quoted as saying, "We don't want to keep it." Considering what has happened in the last 2 weeks, how do those words sit with you?
I mean, again, the Israelis are not going to give up the primary responsibility to preempt or prevent the resurgence of Hamas or any other Palestinian group in the wake of October 7. The question is, who or what is going to maintain law and order? Who or what is going to prevent a Hamas resurgence? And he has hinted at the possibility of Arab boots on the ground, some sort of Arab peacekeeping force. But that's clearly going to depend on ending the war, alleviating the suffering of Gazans, and probably building some sort of bridge to a negotiation to address the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. None of these things right now are anywhere near reality.
Okay. Aaron David Miller with the Carnegie Foundation. Aaron, good to talk with you. We appreciate your analysis tonight. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
To the Middle East now. Hamas has reportedly agreed to a new ceasefire proposal with Israel put forward by mediators. Under the deal, around half of the Israeli hostages still being held in Gaza would be freed in return for Israel releasing Palestinian prisoners. The potential breakthrough follows negotiations between Hamas and Egyptian and Qatari officials. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released a video shortly after this news broke. In it, he described Hamas as being under massive pressure, but he did not comment on the proposal. Journalist Karim El-Gawhary gave us this assessment on why Hamas has agreed to the ceasefire proposal now.
I think there's no question that they're under pressure right now. First, there's the Israeli military advances into Gaza City itself. I think they're also under pressure from their own starved people to end this war and to avoid also further displacement of another 800,000 people from in and around Gaza City. At the same time, of course, Netanyahu himself is under pressure to end the war. Not only international, where more and more countries are turning away from him, but as we can see in the last days, also recently through huge demonstrations within Israel that demand the end of the war. So both sides are under pressure to end this.
Journalist Karim El-Gawhary there speaking with us earlier. Our coverage continues now with Guy Poran. He's a retired Israeli Air Force pilot and a critic of Prime Minister Netanyahu's handling of the Gaza conflict. Mr. Poran, it's good to have you with us. Maybe I can just start by asking for your reaction to what we're seeing happening in just the past few hours. News of Hamas saying yes to this proposed ceasefire, these deals. What do you think of this?
Well, I think that between the Hamas confusion and the Israeli government confusion, we, the Israeli public, don't know anything anymore, because up until a while ago, the prime minister, the Hamas was insisting on having a partial plan, and the prime minister said, no, only a full plan for all the hostages. And then they switched parts. And now the prime minister, it seems to us in Israel that it's true that he's under a lot of pressure, but I am afraid that the biggest pressure, and the one that he's going to give up to, is the pressure from within his government, from the extreme right-wing ministers who made it very clear that if he does not go ahead with this conquering of the entire Gaza Strip, and he goes for a hostage deal, they will make his government fall. So at this point in time, we are hopeful that he is indeed going to make some kind of a deal, but we're not sure of it at all.
Mr. Poran, let me ask you, is the Prime Minister, do you think he's listening to the public? I mean, the public has been protesting. They want to see some sort of a deal. They want to see the remaining living hostages released. Is Netanyahu, is he hearing that?
Unfortunately not. And, day before yesterday, there was the biggest demonstration in the history of Israel. Probably more than 1 million people stormed the streets with the same demand: make a hostage deal, stop the war. Myself, I am leading a group of over 1,000 ex-Israeli Air Force pilots. We were also in front of the Ministry of Defense demanding the same thing. All the polls are showing that between 75 and 80% of the Israeli public is demanding the stop of the war with a hostage deal.
But you haven't made a difference.
Even the polls that are showing...
Mr. Martin, you haven't made a difference, though, have you?
It doesn't make any difference for... they say that those kind of protests don't make a difference for the leaders until they do. So we're hoping that somehow, because also the voters, all the polls are showing that the coalition, Netanyahu's coalition's voters, are also, the majority of them are pushing for an end to the war with a deal. So I don't know how long he can execute a plan against the will of the majority of the country.
What do you say to the fact that your prime minister has called dissent coming from the military, from people such as yourself, as being unforgivable, and threatened to even dismiss reservists who speak out?
Well, we're used to hearing all these kind of blames and fakes about the people who are the most patriotic, the most serving people in the history of Israel, people who've given many, many years in the service and fought the war. And he is, talking and giving us bad names, while at the same time, he's very busy trying to push a law that will release tens of thousands of Orthodox young people perfectly able to go to the army. He's pushing for their so that they don't go to the army. So it's become a real absurd here.
It's hard. It's hard to know, though, what serving Israeli military officers and soldiers think about this, because they're not allowed to publicly express political opinions, right? So when we hear about this growing rift between Israel's military leadership and Netanyahu's government over Gaza, I mean, we're shooting in the dark a little bit, aren't we? I mean, how big is this rift?
No, we know, you're right. The people who are currently in service, and definitely those in Gaza, are not expressing themselves, but we know what the feelings are. We speak to a lot of those people who are doing the reserve. Many of them, when called for another round of reserve in Gaza, are not showing up. The government and different units, battalions, it's just unbelievable. Today, they post on social media requests for people to go join the fighting people in Gaza. So they're desperate. So we know what the feeling is. And you're right. The fact that the chief of staff, the top commander of the army, expressed his objection to the plan of the prime minister creates a big damage to the morale of the soldiers. You can imagine that soldiers out in the Gaza, when they hear about the disagreement of their top commander, who sends them to missions that he's not complete, that he's against, this creates a huge confusion and a damage to their morale.
Let me ask you about the hostages before we run out of time. You have repeatedly called for a deal to bring the hostages home. It's estimated that there are still 20 living hostages in Gaza. Do they really have much leverage now in the war planning mechanisms of Israel?
Well, the chief of staff again said when he was asked by the government to execute this plan of conquering the entire city of Gaza, he said this is a death trap for the hostages, also for many Israeli soldiers that will try to do it. Everybody knows that the idea of, on one hand, conquering or destroying Hamas to the last soldier cannot be at the same time saving those 20 miserable hostages who have been there for nearly 2 years. It doesn't go together. And this is what the people in Israel, more than anything, are really, really, really angry about, is that the government, in a cold-blooded way, saying to the army to execute a plan that will most certainly leave those hostages dead.
Okay. Retired Israeli Air Force pilot and reserve captain Guy Poran. Mr. Poran, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, sharing your thoughts with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bert.